Now, let's look at the various parts of a plot structure. The various parts. Now, under the plot structure, we are going to have the beginning of a story. Okay, yes, because plot has to do with arrangement of a story. So, what do you call the beginning of a story under the plot structure? The beginning is referred to as exposition. What do you call exposition? Exposition refers to the initial unfolding of the necessary background of the major events in the story. From the word expose, you are told how the story is going to look like. For example, at the beginning of Second Class Citizen, we are told about the fact that Ada was roughly born in such a way that her humanity as a girl is not recognized. They gave birth to her when everybody was expecting a girl child or a boy child, and then unfortunately for her, she turns out to be a girl, and people were disappointed. That has exposed us to the story itself, which is gender discrimination. Okay, so that's what they call the beginning of a story, exposition, otherwise called protasis or exodium. Then every story has a beginning, does not end at the beginning. It must develop, it must progress to the middle. So the progression of a story from the exposition to the middle is referred to as epistasis. Little wonder they call it rising action, as or you also call it complication of the plot, because as the events rise, okay, the plot becomes complex because more characters are introduced to further reveal the thematic concern of the writer. Okay, then we have the middle of a story. The middle of a story is the most intense part. The most intense part, otherwise called climax. That is the point the conflict is fully ripe, ready to be resolved. We also call it the turning point of a narrative. At that point, you begin to look for solution. For example, to your problem. For example, in Second Class Citizen, the turning point or the most intense part is the part Ada's manuscript of his book, of her book rather, called Bride Price, was actually burnt by her husband Francis. And then from there, Ada started looking for solution to her problem. Okay, by leaving her husband's home to go and get her own apartment. All right, so the point from the climax down to the uh, resolution is referred to as anticlimax, because the way it's serious from the beginning to the middle is not as serious as that from the middle to the end. So there is a decline of action from the climax to the end. It's called anticlimax, or you call it falling actions. So from the climax down to the resolution, what you are looking for is just how the events are going to be resolved. Then the resolution of the conflict at the end is called denouement. Denouement is from the French term. It's a French term which means untying of the plot or unknotting of the plot. Okay, but don't forget that the denouement of a tragedy is referred to as uh, catastrophe, because the ending of a tragedy is always disastrous for the major character, as we find in Odewale's case in The Gods Are Not to Blame, and in the case of Madame Yoko in Let Me Die Alone. Okay, so that's how it is. And don't also forget that another name for climax is catastasis. All right, so that's that.